Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Whatever, Whenever podcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Show number 2 for this brand new podcast, and glad you all could be with me. I'm excited for this show and excited for all the things we're going to be getting into and covering here over the course of this show and the coming shows. The first show that I did was sort of kind of like the pilot episode, really. This is going to be kind of like more like the first episode, because the first episode we did was a wrap up of 2019. So that's a little longer. The link to this show will change, every week. Sometimes it might be long, sometimes it might be short. But again, that kind of goes with the format of what I'm trying to do here with this, which is, whatever, whenever. I'll talk about whatever I want. Do it whenever I want. It'll be however long I want it to be. So I'm glad to have you all on board for the ride, and excited to get into a various amount of different things and stuff that I'm into. Like I said in the first episode, it was really kind of a wrap up of 2019. So there's, it was longer. There's a lot more stuff in there than we'll normally have in each show, but I'll do my best every week to give you the most stuff I can. So we're going to be getting into a lot of various things for you here, a lot of different segments. I'm going to be breaking up this show into various segments, and if you're watching on the YouTube channel, there will be video accompaniments with each segment there, and you'll know where you're at and all that stuff. So I will have a proper intro to the show coming, and proper outro and all that. So that all that stuff, it will come and will grow. We did just get the Whatever, Whenever podcast Facebook page up. So please go and give us a like over there on the Whatever, Whenever podcast Facebook page. I'm actually excited about that page because I'll be posting not just the links to the show and stuff for you to listen to there, but I'll also be posting photos. I'll be posting videos, stuff related to stuff that we talk about on the show, music videos, concert footage, comedy clips, different things, just all kinds of different stuff. I plan on posting a lot. I haven't posted a lot yet because I just started the page up. I want to wait till we get some likes over there before I start posting things. But yeah, I'm excited to be posting, because like I said before, this is a different type of show than what I've done for the past almost 13 years. So I'll just be able to share a lot different content on this show with you than I would normally with the other kind of stuff that I do. So with that said, our first segment of the show tonight is MMA Corner. Coming up on the 18th, Saturday, January 18th, we have the first numbered UFC event of the year, UFC 246, at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is a much heralded card, big fight card, first big fight of the year, and it is a doozy. The headlining main event for this card is, of course, the return of the notorious Conor McGregor, and he'll be fighting Donald Cowboy Cerrone on that. We'll get to that. I want to start down at the bottom. For those of you who, I didn't know this for a long time, and I've talked to a lot of people who watch UFC who don't think do it either. But in case you didn't, before you've got the main card, but you also have the preliminary card, and on some of them, they even have the early prelims. And I got to tell you, I think this sport's I think it's the best bang for your buck. If you're into the sport, I think it's the best bang for your buck as far as, entertainment goes, because if you count the prelims, you're looking at 6, 7 hours, which some people might be like, oh, I couldn't watch for that long. No, I love it. I think it's great. because you get to, and I didn't even realize that they broadcast the prelims for a long time. I always just watched the main cards and never watched the prelims, and I'd hear about these fights and I'd be like, well, why didn't I see that? And then I found out about the prelims, and I started watching the prelims too, and I realized that if you're not watching the prelims, you're missing out, especially if you're a big fan. You're missing out on a whole bunch of fights, and there are some great fights in those prelims oftentimes. Granted, they are oftentimes up-and-coming fighters, not big names oftentimes. There are occasionally big names, or people that have gone down in the ranks and are fighting their way back up. But, if you've never checked out the prelims for the UFC fights, I highly suggest it, because it's once you... I mean, I've literally have seen the not very often, but I have seen times where there's better fights in the prelims sometimes than even on the main card, because these people are hungry, man. You got some of these guys coming up, and they're hungry for it. So they're fighting, oftentimes they're fighting for their lives. So the preliminary card for UFC 246 actually features some fighters that have been fighting for quite some time, but just haven't quite gotten there yet. And then you've got some newcomers that are fighting their way up. You've got 2 fights in the men's featherweight division on the prelim card. You got Chaz Skelly and Grant Dawson in the featherweight division. You got Drew Dober and Nasrat Haqparast in the lightweight division, and followed by Andre Philly versus Sodiq Youssef. Sodiq Youssef, I've actually seen him fight before. He's he's kind of an up and comer, but he's fighting a guy that's got 20 wins, 6 losses. He's got 10 wins, 1 loss. And that's the other thing that's great about the sport is you just never know. It doesn't matter how good one fighter is versus another. You could see it can go either way anytime. It's very unpredictable. And then the headline fight, the one I'm most looking forward to on the prelim card, is the women's flyweight division battle between Roxanne Modafferi's 23-16 lifetime wins versus the up-and-comer Macy Barber. Macy Barber has made a lot of noise. She's an up-and-comer. She's super young. I think she's only like 21 years old. Yeah, but she's undefeated in the UFC at just 21 years old, 8-0. So I'm kind of surprised that they put her on the preliminary card for this, to be honest with you. But at the same time, when you look at the main card and you look how stacked that main card is, and you're like, okay, now I see. But then again, she is the main event on the preliminary card, which is where you mostly see. It's crazy though when you watch the live streams sometimes and stuff on the prelims. You'll see there's like nobody in the arena for a lot of those. But when you get to the to the women's when you get to the headliner car on the preliminary card, which is the women's flyweight this time, you start to see more people there. Macy Barber, she's an up and comer. I don't know. I gotta say personally, some of these matches, you can tell some of the matchups are, I don't know. Sometimes they face, you gotta understand, Macy Barber's 21 years old. She's 8-0 in her 8 UFC appearances, undefeated so far. She's going against Roxanne Modafferi, who really is, she's never really made, I'm not quite sure how long she's been fighting, quite some time. I mean, she's 23-16, which means she's been fighting for a while. But she's 37 years old, and 37's rather old for UFC for fighting age. I mean, you've certainly had some exceptions to that rule through the years. You've had some people go beyond that. But, I mean, certainly if you look at the men's division, where you got somebody like Daniel Cormier And Daniel Cormier's probably got, I mean, he's been the champ once or twice, I think. He's probably, he's about 40, 41. He's probably on his way out. He lost his last fight, but I think he's going to come and fight one more time, try to fight for the title. But Daniel Cormier is great. I mean, he's really, he doesn't have anything left to prove as far as I'm concerned. But this lineup, I mean, this matchup between Roxanne Modafferi and Maycee Barber, it's an interesting matchup. You've got the veteran Roxanne who's been there. She's 37 years old. They're both pretty well equally matched. I mean, they're both. You get Maycee Barber's a little shorter. She's 5'4". Roxanne Modafferi's 5'6". Both 125 pounds fighting in the flyweight division, and Roxanne Modafferi has a reach advantage on her, 69-inch reach versus Maycee Barber's 65-inch reach. Personally, I got to be honest with you. We'll see. I'm really not a fan of Maycee Barber. I don't know. Maybe it's because she's young. I don't know what it is. I've just seen her in some interviews. She just seems like she's, and it's probably just youth. She just seems like she's, I don't know, a little extraordinarily cocky. And that's the thing about MMA. I mean, it's not fucking wrestling. It's not WWE. MMA is all about respect. And those fighters that don't show the respect to their opponent, because listen, a lot of people don't realize, I mean, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of money just to be able to make it to where you're even on a card. And these people don't get paid a lot of money at all. I mean, certainly you can make, a lot of money, but also at the same time, the UFC they made changes, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago to where it actually makes it a lot more difficult for these fighters to make money. It's one of the negative things, I don't like to focus too much on the negative. I think it's a great sport. It's very entertaining. It's great. But, like anything, it does have its negatives too. The fighters used to have the ability to be able to get their own sponsors, which they can still do. But they were able to have, their sponsors, kind of like, imagine like a NASCAR. You know how you got NASCARs and all the cars have, the corporate sponsors or whatever, have all the sponsors all over the cars. Well, that's how it used to be in the UFC. And the fighters would have their sponsors all over their jerseys and stuff. Well, the UFC made a deal with Reebok 3 or 4 years ago. And once they did that, they can't wear anything that isn't Reebok branded. Everything they have to wear in the ring, anything with a UFC logo on it has to be Reebok branded, which is so weird because, Reebok's not even really it's not really even a popular brand anymore, but they showed them the money, and I guess that's what they decided to do. I don't know. I've heard a lot of fighters talking about it. A lot of fighters retired and quit because of it, because it just really significantly cut their ability to be able to make money. Because a lot of these guys, especially on the lower cards, if you win, you might get. If you're fighting on the prelim card, I'm not sure how much it is now, but you might get 10 grand and maybe a 10 grand bonus if you win, maybe half that if you lose. These people don't make a lot of money. You got to pay, even if if you lose, you still got to pay your trainers. So it's crazy. And you've got Dana White, the president of the UFC. This guy's going out and gambling $500,000, $1 million a hand at the Palm Casino every night. And you're only paying your fighters pennies, and then you're also restricting. I don't want to dwell too much on the negative, but we'll see. Maycee Barber's an up and comer. A lot of people think she's going to be a future champion, but like I said, MMA is all about respect, and she doesn't seem like she has a lot of respect for the fights I've seen. She just seems to be like, oh yeah, I'm awesome, I'm great, and that shit doesn't fly. Under the last UFC, the 245, you had Amanda Nunes fought Jermaine Durandamy in that fight, and Amanda Nunes is a monster. I mean, she's widely considered the GOAT. She's widely considered the greatest female fighter of all time. In fact, my favorite female fighter in the UFC, Valentina Shevchenko, she's only ever been beat twice. And the 2 times that she's been beat were both by Amanda Nunes. And I don't know. I just don't like. A lot of those people that come out of fight out of American Top Team are all like that. They're all real cocky. I've talked about their owner, Dan Lambert. They're just real cocky over there. That's where Colby Covington fights out of. It's also where Greg Hardy. I'm a fan of Greg Hardy, former Dallas Cowboys player Greg Hardy. He fights out of American Top Team as well. But at the UFC 245, when Amanda Nunes fought Jermaine Durandamy, most of, I would say, in fact, I'm pretty sure almost every single fight Amanda Nunes has ever fought has never been out of the first round. Never even went out of the first round. And she was usually knocking people out in the first round, almost all of her fights. Jermaine Durandamy took her the full 5 rounds. She lost, but she took her she was the only person that Amanda Nunes has ever fought that took her the whole 5 rounds. I mean, even though she lost, that is highly commendable. That's a feat nobody else has done before. And if you're an opposing fighter and you come out and you win against somebody who takes you the first 5 rounds for the first time, you ought to pay that person some respect. And she didn't pay her any respect. She didn't acknowledge it in her post-fight speech. All she did was showboat around and run around the ring with her belts and call Dan Lambert into the ring. She didn't give her any respect. And those type of people, they don't last long. Just like Colby Covington, he was shit-talking everybody. That stuff will fly in the WWE, but UFC is a fucking cage fight. Let's not forget what it is. It's a cage fight. A lot of people, I think, forget that. And it's just the way it is. The people who don't have respect for other fighters and the people who are shit talkers, and they don't last long. So we'll see with Macy Barber. I don't know. I'm just saying personally for me, I'm not saying she's a bad fighter. I'm just saying personally for me, I'm not a fan. But let's go to enough on the prelims. Let's go to this totally jacked and stacked main card for UFC 246. Starting out with the first fight in the men's lightweight division, Carlos Diego Ferreira, 16 wins, 2 losses, versus Anthony Showtime Pettis, 22 wins, 9 losses. I'm putting my money on Pettis on that one for sure. I'm gonna guess Pettis knocks him out probably in the second round. That would be my guess. God, this is a great card. This is a fucking fantastic card. Anthony Showtime Pettis is a monster. He's a great fighter. Carlos Diego Ferreira, good fighter too, but I think Pettis takes in this one. And the next fight is in the women's strawweight division. We've got Claudia Gadelha versus Alexa Grasso. Both up-and-comers, both great fighters in their own right. That's a hard call, man. That's a hard call. Alexa Grasso versus Claudia Gadelha. One of the things I was going to mention, too, a minute ago, before I start getting into this fight, when I was talking about Amanda Nunes, there are... Oh, gosh, how do I say this? There's no real easy way to say this. Listen, if you're new to me and you've never listened to me before, one thing you have to understand about me is I shoot it to you straight. I don't care who I offend. I don't care who doesn't like what I say. I just shoot it to you straight. So that's what I've always done, and that's what I will continue to do here in this show, even though it's a different format than what I've done in the past. But I got to say, there are some women, and I will use that term loosely, air quotes women. There are some women that fight in the UFC. There's really no other way to say it, that I think the term woman applies to some of these women loosely. and I'm not saying that in any derogatory way, but you also have to understand is that, yes, there is USADA, which is the, United States Anti-Doping Authority and all that stuff. And yeah, they test these people for performance enhancing drugs and stuff like that. But a lot of people don't know that, yeah, they go back and they can test and they can detect stuff, but there's certain things that they're not testing for. And a lot of they test for like performance enhancers and certain things. And there's certain things they can pick up and there's other things they can't pick up. And there are a lot of these women who have used, human growth, they injected male hormones, human growth hormones, steroids. As long as you're not, as long as you don't have anything in your system within 24 hours before the fight, there's a lot of stuff you can get away with. And Amanda Nunes, she's a lesbian. I'm not saying that in any derogatory way, but she is almost... She's almost more man than woman. I mean, some of these girls that she's fighting, they just can't even compete with her because she's almost more man than woman. And I would say, I could be totally off the mark about this, but I'm just talking about ones we know that are confirmed. I would say probably about 70% of the women that fight in the UFC are lesbians. And again, that's neither here nor there, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. But on top of that, there are some of these women who are more man than woman because they've taken human growth hormones. I mean, you look at Chris Cyborg. Chris Justino is her name, but Chris Cyborg is what she goes by. I mean, there were a lot of fights. Go look up pictures of Chris Cyborg and look at pictures of her early in her career. And she looked very feminine, looked very much like a woman. And then she started taking male hormones. And she started to get like the fucking caveman head. And looking way more like a man than a woman. And she, had some fights where she probably shouldn't have won. And the reason I bring this up, Claudia Gadelha and Alexa Grasso were fighting in the women's strawweight on the main card of UFC 246. Claudia Gadelha is actually a lesbian as well, and she they've got the ring card girls, the girls that walk around, they're always hardly any clothes on, and people always make comments and think, oh, yeah, they're probably banging the fighters or whatever. Yeah, but I think they're more banging the women fighters than the men fighters, from what I've heard. Claudia Gadelha is actually, I think she's engaged to one of the ring card girls. But I saw this one girl. I can't remember who it is. But there are some monsters in the UFC women's division and the ones I like, like Valentina Shevchenko and others, I like the ones that are just pure fighters. Valentina Shevchenko, she's a 20-time world Muay Thai world champion. Unbelievable. 20-time. I mean, her mother was a Muay Thai world champion in the 80s. That was unheard of. I mean, it's only really become a thing over the past 10 years, women being in MMA. You can imagine back in the 80s, I mean, she might have even been one of the only ones. But Valentina Shevchenko, actually, her first fight was at 12 years old. She knocked out a 22-year-old man at 12 years old. So there are some real legitimate non-cheater fighters in there. But I just think if you're using steroids and human growth hormone, and you know what that stuff does to women's parts, don't you? Remember the fighter, China? Ooh. I mean, it makes their clits grow into dicks, gives them a clit dick. I saw this one girl, I can't remember who it was. It was at the weigh-ins. It might have even been the weigh-ins for UFC 245. But there was when I was watching the weigh-ins. They have, if you're not familiar with this, they have the weigh-ins. They have the official weigh-ins where they go and they weigh in, and they have very little clothing on. Sometimes they even strip clothing off to try to get down up to weight, and they'll put like a ring around them, to hide it or whatever. And then they have the ceremonial weigh-ins. And the ceremonial weigh-ins, they have an audience there and a crowd. And they've already weighed in and know their weight, but they do it in front of an audience, and they have like a stare-off thing, and Joe Rogan's there announcing it, staring at all the chicks' asses. Don't think I didn't see that, Rogan. Rogan's always staring at chicks' asses at the weigh-ins. But there was, I can't remember what fighter it was. There was one, I was watching the weigh-ins. There was one girl that got on the scale last time, and I was sitting there watching the weigh-ins, and I went, holy shit, look at the dick piece on her. This girl had a dick piece on her, son. I'm not even kidding you. She had a dick piece on her. It was bigger than mine. It was bigger than, I'm not kidding. This thing was thick and fat and looked like Gonzo's from the Muppets' nose. I'm not telling you, it was curved. You could see it because they really don't have anything on, just underwear, like underwear and a bra. This girl had a dick piece on her, son. This wasn't like no clit dick either. Like a clit turn. This was a she-male. And it made me wonder. It's like, God, I think there might be some of these. That's the thing. There might be a lot of these women that are fighting that are like this. The first one I ever seen, this girl had a dick piece on her. Good God. It was fat and thick and looked like a swollen pickle. I was like, Jesus, am I the only one seeing this? Or I'm not fucking paying that. I guess they just turn a blind eye to it. I don't know, man. I think that's, I don't know how if you got male hormones running through you and you're just up there just fucking smoking women, beating the brakes off of them every fight. That's a little unfair. I don't know. I just think there ought to be, but then again, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to fucking, there's nothing they can really do. It's not like they can have a fucking, a dick piece inspection. All right, ladies, come in here and drop your drawers. Let us see if you got a dick piece on you or not. You know what I mean? It's not like they could necessarily do that. But man, this girl you could see it through, dude. It was unbelievable. I've seen even guys. I've not seen guys where their dick pieces were that visible at a weigh-in. I'm serious. This chick had a fucking dick piece on her. It was huge. You could see it clearly through her underwear. You couldn't see any balls. But she for sure had a dick piece on her. God damn. I don't know, man. I don't know. But Chris Cyborg, she definitely had a dick piece on her. She got let go from the UFC last year, though. She's fighting in Bellator now, which you won't hear me talk about Bellator here on this show. I don't watch Bellator. It just doesn't interest me. A lot of people are into it. It's owned by Viacom. It makes me not into it, just that alone. But yeah, I love the women's fights. I think the women's fights are great. I was never a fan of who really made, for a long time, Dana White. For the longest time, he said there would never be women fighting in the UFC. And I do like the fact that it's all mixed together. I'm glad they don't have separate events, for the women fight, like the WNBA, another sport predominantly made up of, I hear it's like 100% in the WNBA. That's what I've heard. I heard it's 100% lesbians there. Probably some dick pieces over there too, but Ronda Rousey was really the one that caused the explosion and allowed the, started getting traction going that made Dana White start having women's MMA in the UFC. I was never a fan of Ronda Rousey. I just didn't like her. And she was another one of those ones where, she didn't have respect, and she got dealt with and got axed. I remember I forget what was it, the Holly Holm fight? I think it was the Holly Holm fight when Holly Holm beat her. She lost 2 in a row. bad knockouts. And I remember, because she was started being in movies. She was going on Ellen DeGeneres. I mean, she was becoming, out there becoming Hollywood and stuff. And I remember that fight. I think it was the last time she got beat. And this was back when they were still on Fox. UFC was still on Fox, so they still had the old announcer in there that they fired later, shortly after that fight, I think. But I just remember she was getting beat, and the announcer guy says, "It takes a lot of energy to be a rock star." Made that comment, because he was referring to, and I get it. I mean, I get what he was saying. I understand what he's saying, meaning what he was implying was that she was spending more time going on Ellen DeGeneres and being in movies like The Expendables and kind of being a star around Hollywood and spending less time in the gym and less time. She just got arrogant and got to the point where she thought she was unbeatable, because she was unbeatable. She was beating everybody for a period of time. But during the period of time, because I don't think she fought for maybe a year and a half, while she was out doing movies and going on Ellen and, being a Hollywood star, what she didn't realize is during that short amount of time that she took off, it's weird because it was kind of her own fault. She made such an impact and she was so influential that during that time in which she was off from fighting, going out and being a star, the sport evolved in that short amount of time, and a bunch of other up-and-coming women fucking murderers started coming up while she was out doing the Hollywood thing and not paying attention. So when she came back to fight, she came in there thinking it was business as usual and got her fucking ass handed to her. She got beat twice in a row, and that's why she retired and went to the WWE, because if you lose, that's why a lot of fighters retire, and then they'll come back, because if you lose 3 fights in a row, you get automatically dropped from the UFC roster. You're out. So if she would have lost 3 in a row, she'd have been out. That would have affected her legacy. But the commentator made that statement. Takes a lot of energy to be a rock star. And Joe Rogan, you could hear Joe Rogan get angry at that comment. And he said, it has nothing to do with being a rock star. She's getting the crap beat out of her right now. And she did. And then she quit after that. And I got to say, man, I love Valentina Shevchenko. I wish there was some way I could go see her fight next month at UFC 247 in Houston. I'm hoping maybe some miracle happens or something. Somebody comes up with a ticket for me or something. But I got to be honest, I'm a little worried. She's going to be defending, going for her 3rd title defense in a row. And I got to say, man, I keep up with her a lot, so I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried she might lose next month. Not because her opponent's better than her, but because there's that thing that happens, man, when you become the champ, kind of like Ronda Rousey. Everybody wants a piece of you. You become, you're going to all the events. She's doing the Hollywood thing now. In fact, they've got, I don't know if it comes out this year or next year. I know they finished shooting it, but they actually have a Hollywood movie coming out, a women's MMA Hollywood movie coming out starring Halle Berry in the lead role. It's going to be kind of like a female version of Rocky, where she goes through, obviously, the story of Rocky and stuff, but instead of fighting the big blonde Russian Dolph Lundgren at the end, she's got to fight the now redheaded Valentina Shevchenko. So, and I don't know, I've been keeping up with her training. I've been watching the last fight Valentina fought last year. She won by decision, but it wasn't a very impressive victory. I got to be honest. It wasn't like her. It wasn't very decisive like her other, certainly not like the head kick she had earlier in the year last year. Was not as decisive as that. I think that, I don't know, man. I'm worried. I mean, she's a great fighter, but man, that's another kind of one of the weird things about this sport is that people can fight. It can be too good. They can fight their way. If you're too good, you can fight your way out of a job. Certainly, as I mentioned, the Lioness, Amanda Nunes, earlier, she's pretty much in that position now. She has cleaned out her division to the point where there's really not much left for her. There's nobody left for her to fight. And Valentina Shevchenko has almost pretty much done that as well. She's pretty much cleaned out her division, and there's really not much left for her to fight or much left for her to do in that division unless she loses. Goes back down to second and then comes back and fights for the title again. I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm just saying that a lot of times I think that there is some of that where a lot of these fighters don't fight up to their normal standards when they get to the point to where, because they want to keep on fighting. They don't want to just have to quit and be out because there's nobody left for them to fight. But it's crazy how that can happen. How you can fight your way all the way up to the top, and then, I guess like anything in life, the only way once you get to the top, the only place you can go from the top is down. So I'm a little worried, man. I got to say, I don't think I've ever, as long as I've been watching her for a couple of years now, I've never really been worried. But yeah, Claudia Gadelha, Alexa Grasso, women's strawweight fight, 17-4. That's a tough one, man. That's going to be a great fight. That's going to be a great fight. It's hard for me to say. I think Claudia Gadelha is probably going to win, but wouldn't be surprised if Alexa Grasso did either because she's a great fighter as well. Moving on to the next fight for the main card at UFC 246, coming up on the 18th of this month. In the heavyweight division, Aleksei Olenek, another guy that's been another murderer that's been around forever. 57 wins, 13 losses. Versus Maurice Green, 8 wins, 3 losses. God, that's another one where it's just like, shit, that could go either way. Let's look at the stats on those fighters. Again, this is another one where you've got, Aleksei Olenek he's been fighting forever. He's 42 years old. He's well beyond the normal age range for the prime of fighters, whereas Maurice Green, another up-and-comer, 33 years old, right in the prime. I'm not sure, kind of a weird... the heavyweight division is such a weird division because it's the heavyweight division is closer to boxing than any of the other divisions, meaning you don't see a lot of groundwork, not a lot of jiu-jitsu going on in the heavyweight division. It's really a lot of stand-up boxing, a lot of clinch work going on. This is another one that could go either way. Aleksei Olenek he's a proven veteran. The guy's got 57 fucking wins lifetime, 13. He very well could come out victorious, but at the same time, Maurice Green, 8 wins, 3 losses. He's an up-and-comer. That's a tough one. These are all great fights. This is going to be a great card. And I'm glad there's a good amount of women's fights on this one. And the co-main event in the women's bantamweight division, the co-main event for UFC 246, Raquel Pennington, she's another great up-and-comer. I've seen her fight a few times. I think she's got a real big future in the UFC, but she's going to have to make it through some of these other murderers in that weight class that she's up against. It's tough, man. It really is. There's some tough murders. She's going up against the preacher's daughter, Holly Holm. Man, Holly Holm, I like Holly Holm. She's a murderer, but what I like about Holly Holm is that she approaches every fight the same way, and she's took some hard losses as of late. I think she may have even lost her last 2. It seems like she's lost her last 2 fights. So she's really looking. This may be. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything about Holly Holm having any plans on retiring or anything. But I have to say, just in my opinion, I think if Holly Holm doesn't beat Raquel Pennington at UFC 246, I think she's done. I could be wrong about that. I think, in my opinion, if she doesn't win, she's done. She's 38 years old. She's 12-5 lifetime. Raquel Pennington's 10-7. I mean, they're about as evenly matched as you can get as far as height and weight. I mean, Holly's 5'7", Raquel's 5'6". She's 31. Holly Holm's 38. I mean, they're about as evenly matched. I think Holly Holm has the advantage on her because she's a veteran and the fact that she's coming off a couple of hard losses. She's going to be coming in there ready to kill. That fight where she got the head kick to Ronda Rousey and she basically, well, not basically, she did. She retired. She fucking retired Ronda Rousey. I watched that fight again the other day. God damn, that was a fantastic fight. And her reaction at the end of that fight, that really, that's, to me, that's what I was talking about earlier. That's the respect you see. You know, when you see somebody put a vicious head kick on their opponent like that, and, I mean, she immediately just busted into tears. But not because it was oh, I'm great, no, I can't, oh, I'm crying because I won. I'm so happy I won. It wasn't that. It was, you could tell, I mean, it wasn't lost on her what she was up against with Ronda Rousey. And knowing how much work it takes just to be able to get to that point where you're fighting the champ. I mean, she was the champ. You could really tell me she was really great, and she went right over and was kneeling down as the doctors were working on Ronda Rousey, and really concerned. Those type of fighters, man, when you see them have the respect, that's the ones that and for the most part that's the case. Most of the time within the UFC, you do see that respect with almost all the fighters, but I just bring up the ones that don't show respect because it's just funny. You watch those ones that don't show respect; those are the ones that don't last very long. Because somebody comes along and makes them show respect. So Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennington in the co-main event of the evening. God damn, that's going to be a fight. Raquel Pennington's going to be coming out trying to win, trying to establish her, her position in the women's bantamweight division, and Holly Holm's going to be coming out trying to stay alive and trying to stay in it. This is, especially within the main event for this card, this is a very difficult card for me to call as far as who's going to win in this. This is tough, man, because this is a very, very well-balanced, well-matched card. The matchmakers did a great job on this card. There's a lot of great cards coming up this year. God damn. I'm excited for this year. There are so many amazing cards coming up this year in the UFC. And then, of course, that leaves us to the main event on the main card. It's crazy that we're starting off. There's so many highly anticipated fights of this year. It's crazy that we're starting off 2020 with one of the most anticipated fights of the year, the main event in the men's welterweight division. Conor McGregor, the notorious Conor McGregor versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Never been a McGregor fan. He's the most popular fighter in the sport. Probably the most popular fighter ever, but I don't like the guy. I'd never have. And normally I'm 100% anything Irish, go Irish, anything, but I've never liked Conor McGregor. The guy hasn't fought in 2 years. He hasn't won in 4 years. I don't even know. I don't, there's a lot of, this is not a conspiracy theory show, but there are a lot of conspiracy theories going around online that Donald Cerrone, Cowboy Cerrone, has been paid to take a fall here. It is odd. They're fighting at 170. That's a much heavier weight division than Conor normally fights at. There was a lot of discussion going on online when this fight was first announced as to why Conor would take a fight at a much heavier weight class than he normally fights at. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems kind of odd. That also kind of justifies some of the conspiracy theories that people have been saying that Donald Cerrone has been paid to take a fall, that he's basically just in there to give Conor McGregor an easy win. You know, I gotta say, I don't know. It's possible. It's definitely possible. I do like Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I'm a fan of Cowboy Cerrone. I gotta admit, I'm a fan of him. I hope he beats the fucking brakes off that fucking Irish leprechaun midget. I hope he does. And I think it's possible. It's definitely possible. But the thing about it is Conor keeps talking about all these other fights, and the media keeps talking about all these other fights for Conor as if the Cerrone fight is a foregone conclusion. That's suspect. That's suspect. They were doing sort of the similar thing back when they had the BMF title belt a few months ago when Jorge Masvidal fought Nate Diaz for the BMF title belt. And I saw an interview with Dana White where Dana White said, yeah, you know, The Rock wants to come and put the belt on Jorge Masvidal. And he said that multiple times. And then I saw an interview with The Rock where he said, yeah, I'm going to come and put the... They were saying it like it was a foregone conclusion that Jorge Masvidal was going to win, and where Nate Diaz is a fucking murderer. That made me suspect, and then, of course, that's exactly what happened. Masvidal won, and The Rock came and put the belt on him. So, I don't know. I think it's highly possible Donald Cowboy Cerrone beats Conor McGregor in this, but at the same time, it would not surprise me in the least bit if the rumors are true, and that this reason this fight is taking place at 170, which is the welterweight, which is what Cerrone fights at. McGregor usually fights at 150. He's coming up to 170 to take this fight. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just highly unusual. Fighters don't do that. They'll go down a weight class and go back, but going up, when you look at his frame, the way he normally fights at, it just does not make a lot of sense for Conor McGregor to go up to 170 for this fight. Something's up. And they keep talking about him fighting. He wants to fight Masvidal for the BMF title later on, even though they already said the BMF title was a one-time thing and there wasn't going to be a challenge to it. I don't know. They're really trying to push Conor McGregor. I don't know. They're either trying to give a definitive end to his career or they're trying to push him back in it. Either way, it should be a great fight, but I think a lot of people are going to be putting money on Conor McGregor. If you're a betting person, I would put some money on Donald Cerrone because he'll probably be the underdog. And one of the things that I've learned from watching this sport as long as I have, oftentimes the underdogs a lot of times win. You know, listen, in case you didn't know, in any sports, I mean, all these sports, they're all, I'm not saying rigged, but they're all really, really heavily influenced by the betting and stuff like that. And a lot of these matchups are made, and a lot of the media stuff that gets talked about is to sway the betting and the gambling and stuff. So, yeah, I would say I would put my money on Donald Cerrone over Conor McGregor. I would put my money on Holly Holm over Rocco Pennington. I would put my money on Maurice Green over Oleksiy Olenek. I would put my money on Claudia Gadelha over Alexa Grasso, and I would put my money on Anthony Pettis over Carlos Diego Ferreira. If you put money on it, you don't win. That's not my bad. Take my advice at your own risk. However, if you do put some money on it, on some of my advice, and you win, hey, slide some over. You know what I'm saying? Share the wealth. And that's it. That's all I've got for this week's MMA Corner. Last week and this sort of ties into MMA a little bit. Well, at least as far as what I was talking about earlier with Chris Cyborg and stuff. Last week on the 2019 wrap-up show, I talked about the Star Wars series, The Mandalorian. And one of the standout performances in that series for me was Gina Carano. And Gina Carano is also a MMA, UFC fighter. She was a pioneer. I mean, she really was one of the first women that broke out as a star within MMA. She was a hell of a fighter. And she's still under contract with the UFC, but she hasn't fought, I think, since 2011 maybe. And a lot of people have wondered why she hasn't taken another fight. And she's another one of those ones that's now got into acting. You might remember if you saw, I can't remember what her character name was, but if you saw the first Deadpool movie, she was in that. She was in the first Deadpool movie at the very end. Remember when he's like, oh, here comes the superhero landing. Remember the big fucking monster chick that he fights at the end? That was her. That was Gina Carano. But she was fantastic in The Mandalorian. I hope she's in the second season as well. Really great performance by her. I really liked seeing her in that, and I thought she did a great job acting. It was really the first thing I think she's been in where she's kind of got to showcase. She was great. She was really great in that. And yeah, she's built like a brick shit house. But going back to what I was talking about with Chris Cyborg earlier, and Chris Cyborg, on the male growth hormones, that was the last person Gina Carano fought in 2011. She hasn't fought since. And she got the brakes beat off of her by Chris Cyborg when Chris Cyborg was in her full male growth hormone fucking prime. I mean, she really was looking like a big sloped forehead caveman, and she beat the total brakes. And listen, I get it. I get why she hasn't fought. It just seems kind of odd that she's still under contract with the UFC and hasn't fought since then. But at the same time, listen, being in movies and being in The Mandalorian, guarantee pays way better than getting punched in the face in a cage fight. And, nobody wants to fight a cheater. That's the bottom line. I mean, I can't say if I was her and I was in her position, I wouldn't have done the same thing. Nobody wants to have to fight a cheater. I mean, Gina Carano was beating everybody. I mean, she was unbeatable until she got put up against, a woman who's on male growth hormones. It's just not fair. It's an unfair advantage. And I could see, I would have done the same thing. Who wants to go fight in a cage fight when somebody's got an unfair advantage? When you're an athlete and you worked your entire life to become an elite athlete and to condition your body to get up to a certain level, and you become proficient in multiple martial arts, whether it be jiu-jitsu or judo or whatever it might be, and then you go and you fight against this person who's cheating and injecting themselves with male growth hormones. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. But she, regardless of that, I really think she had a standout performance in The Mandalorian. She's really great in that. I had to watch episode 8, the last episode of The Mandalorian. I had to watch it twice. I might watch it again. God, it was fantastic. And it had Giancarlo Esposito in it. You might remember Giancarlo Esposito as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad. Yeah, he was amazing. That final episode, episode 8 of The Mandalorian season 1, I don't want to give away anything in case, you haven't seen it and give away any spoilers or anything. But there's a couple of scenes in that. God, there's a couple of scenes in that are among the best scenes that have ever been in the Star Wars universe ever in that episode. Unbelievable. Even better than some of the scenes that have been in the movies. Just amazing. Amazing series. Totally excited for season 2. Totally excited to see where it goes. I loved everything about it. Being a Star Wars fan, I loved it, and just with the whole you're now a clan of 2, and that was so good. When he finally got his brain, got his mark, and it's so good. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Enjoyed that a lot. Now it's time for the movie review segment of the show. Each week I will review a different movie for you. Might be a new movie, might be an old movie. It'll be different every week, but each week I will give you a review of a different movie and talk about that. This week's movie review segment is on Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob reboot. If you're a fan of Kevin Smith and the stuff he's done in the past with movies like Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, the whole View Askew universe, also Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. If you haven't watched Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I highly suggest you go and watch Jay and Silent, or you haven't watched it in a while, I would suggest that you go and watch Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back again, just as a refresher before you watch Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, because there's so many callbacks to that movie and so many things in there that I think you'll enjoy the movie a lot better if you've watched Strike Back recently. So definitely go and watch Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back before you watch Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. Not a terrible movie, not a fantastic, great movie either. I mean, you know, you kind of know what you should know what you're expecting, expecting to get when you watch a Kevin Smith movie, especially Jay and Silent Bob based movie. It's pretty much what you would expect. It's cornball as shit. It's corny. It's kind of groany in some places, but it's a fucking cameo fest, but I also understand the spirit of the movie is also making fun of the whole reboot movie culture and stuff. So it makes fun of itself. It's jacked full of cameos by famous people and has virtually, I think there's at least one person from every single movie that he's done, even stuff like the movie Fanboys and stuff, which he didn't direct, but he was in. There's one person from that in there. Yeah, he's got all the original people from Clerks make a cameo in there. And but it's a stoner movie too, more than any of his other ones. It's a real stoner movie. But yeah, lots of comedians, lots of cameos, lots of funny appearances. Like I said, it's not The Godfather, it's not The Irishman. Listen, set your expectations low. If you're going into this thing with high expectations, expecting a great fucking art piece or you're going to be disappointed. It's it was mildly entertaining, but I will say this. For me, the best part wasn't actually the movie itself. The movie itself was not bad. It's all right. But it just sucks because you know what happens when you go to the movies, man. You go to the movies, you get a fucking you get popcorn, you get something to drink. They upsell you because it's 20 cents more to get the fucking bucket, extra large fucking trough of soda or whatever. So you end up getting that. So the last 15 minutes of the movie, you're sitting over there bouncing your fucking leg up and down, waiting for it to be over because you're about to piss yourself. So it's kind of better to watch it at home so you can pause it. That's what I did. I don't know if it's out on DVD yet, but it was out on torrent, so I watched it that way. But the end credits, the stuff actually when the movie's over, and everything from the end of the movie all the way to the end credits, because there's footage and outtakes that they shot and cut out of the movie. To me, that was better than the movie itself. Was the stuff they cut out. So definitely watch that. I thought it was good. As far as the appearances, Jason Lee, who has retired from acting some years ago, he got Jason Lee to come back out. I liked the scene with Jason Lee. I thought that was good. There was a lot of cool cameos in there. It was kind of a family affair. He had almost all his whole family in there. Even his mother Kevin Smith's mother had a cameo in there. his daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, is in it because he's continuing to try and build a career for her. She was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino's film that came out last year, which I wasn't a fan of. I think I'm the only person that didn't like that movie, but whatever. The standout cameo in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back to me was Ben Affleck. I felt like Ben Affleck kind of stole the show. Because if you know the history between him and Kevin Smith, they were, Kevin Smith was the reason and the only reason. I mean, you want to talk about Owen a career. I mean, that's why they were in so many of his movies as payback. But yeah, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith single-handedly got Miramax to make Good Will Hunting. They had that script floating around for years. Nobody would make the movie. And I guess Kevin Smith took it to Harvey Weinstein, of course. And, the rest is history. But they were not friends for many years. Kind of vague. This is not the conspiracy show, so I don't want to get into any really conspiracy stuff here. But there's sort of some conspiratorial reasons because they were real good friends for a long time. And then Ben Affleck married Jennifer Garner. All Kevin Smith ever said was that Jennifer Garner didn't like him. And that she wouldn't let Ben Affleck be friends with Kevin Smith anymore. And that seemed kind of strange. I mean, first off, what kind of man? I mean, if you're a man, you're letting your woman dictate who you can be friends for. But not only that, I mean, if there's a good reason for it, but nobody's ever given a good reason for it, which seems highly strange. My speculation of the reason for it, from what I've heard, well, we know for a fact Jennifer Garner's father was in the CIA. And there's been rumor that she was in the CIA too. In fact, you got to go back and remember what put Jennifer Garner on the map was that show Alias, where she played a CIA agent. And one of the things within people that worked and people that have families that work within those government agencies like that is that they're not allowed to even be around people who do drugs. And Kevin Smith is, he's a pothead. So that's kind of been the speculation on that front, was that why him and Affleck weren't friends for years was because he wasn't allowed, being married to her, wasn't allowed to be around Kevin Smith because Kevin Smith smokes pot. So one of the things in the Affleck appearance in Jay and Silent Bob's reboot, there's a lot of breaking of the fourth wall in this movie. A lot of blurring of the lines between, I'm not giving away any spoilers here, but a lot of blurring of the lines between fantasy and reality intentionally with this movie. And in the scene with Ben Affleck, you can see that. You can see it kind of be, they're reuniting with, Jay and Silent Bob reuniting with Ben Affleck's character, but there's also, you just have to watch it. And you can tell there's also that thing of it being not fantasy too, of them being reunited in real life too. They kind of indicate that, but I just thought the scene with Ben Affleck was the best cameo in the show, stole the show. It's a great scene, but it's a silly, dumb, goofy movie. If you're in the mood and it's sappy, it's got some sappy heartstring pulling corny shit for it, but it's also got a lot of callbacks, a lot of geek culture, a lot more. Kevin Smith's kind of become the guru of the geek culture and geekdom. And that, he's more recognized for that now than he used to be, but he hasn't always been that way. But listen, going back to Mallrats, 1995, I mean, he was, all the Marvel movies, this is long before the Marvel movies became a thing. And one thing about the Marvel movies is that they all have a Stan Lee cameo in them. And Kevin Smith in 1995 was the guy. Before they were ever even making Marvel movies, he was the first guy to kick off the Stan Lee cameos with Mallrats. And I love that scene. That's if I had to pick my favorite Kevin Smith movie, it has to be Mallrats. It's just I was 19 when it came out. I love the soundtrack. Just I don't know. It's just one of those time and place movies for me. I love that scene with Stan Lee in that, and yes, there is a Stan Lee cameo at the very end of this movie as well. But there's a lot more geek culture stuff in this than there has been in his movies in the past, and again, a lot of callbacks, a lot of appearances of old characters. So if you're into Kevin Smith's thing and you've seen all his other old movies, then you'll be into this, and it'll be fun. It's a fun time. It's not going to be one of those movies you're going to watch as many times as you watched Clerks or Mallrats or Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but it's it's not terrible. And to be honest with you, with the majority of Kevin Smith movies that have come out over the past 2 decades, did he do anything? Has he done anything good since Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back? When did that come out? 2000? It's 20 years ago? God, that might be the last good. Clerks 2 was garbage, and a lot of people, I didn't like Clerks 2. That was garbage. The Walrus movie I thought was garbage. Red State I liked. Red State I thought was good. I thought that was the best. That may have been the only good thing he did for 20 years. Yeah, but this one's good. I mean, it's good. It's not as terrible as the Yoga Hosers. That was terrible too. But of course, that at least with that one though, at least with Yoga Hosers, that he was upfront about it, and it was good as advertised. He was very upfront about saying this is a terrible movie. So I admire that. I think it's that's at least it's good as advertised. He told everybody, hey, listen, this is a terrible movie. I'm admitting it. But, it was almost completely fan-funded, too. This movie was not made by a studio. It was funded by, in fact, Jay Muse, Silent Bob's other half. His wife in real life was one of the people that put up a bunch of money for the movie to be made. So I think for that reason, it's commendable. He made the kind of movie he wanted to make on his own terms with funding from fans and a truly independent film. And from what I hear, they made enough money to where it's going to enable him to make a Clerks 3. So interesting stuff there. So there you go. There's my film review of the week. I'll give you each week, like I said, I'll give you a different review of a film. Sometimes it'll be a new movie, a current movie. Sometimes it'll be a review of an older movie, a classic movie, a movie that's been out for a while. But each week here on the Whenever podcast, I will review a different movie for you each week. On the comedy front, what do I got to talk about on the comedy front this week? Season 2 of The Degenerates just hit Netflix a couple of days ago. If you've never seen The Degenerates, season 1 came out last year. And it showcases, it's kind of a thing they're doing. I think it's a great idea. Not all of them are winners, but I think it's a great idea because instead of giving somebody, listen, the majority of comedy specials, there's so many comedians. Comedy specials are just not good. And they're not oftentimes a very good representation of the comedian. They just don't, I mean, there's just not very many. I mean, unless you go back to something like, Richard Pryor, Live on the Sunset Strip, or go back to, Eddie Murphy, Delirious, or something like that, or some of the Carlin HBO specials and some of the classics. Comedy specials just in general are just not, first of all, an hour for a comedy special is too long. It's just too long. 45 minutes is good, 40 minutes is good. But not every comedian can kill in that format. Joey Diaz is a great example. He is an absolute murderer live. If you ever get a chance to go see Joey Diaz live, go see him live. You will laugh the entire time. But his comedy specials in large are not great. And he was on season 1 of The Degenerates last year, and it wasn't that great. He admitted it wasn't that great. He said his energy wasn't there. You could just tell something was off. But basically what it is I think all the first season, it was like 30 minutes or 29 minutes for each one. This season is a little shorter, which it's like, come on, guys. It's like, can't you just get a happy medium, meet in the middle? It's like an hour's too long, but 19 minutes is not long enough. 17 minutes, that's not long enough. So that's my only complaint. But season 2 came out. The highlight for me for season 2 of the Degenerates, and my highlight and pick this week for you to check out is Ms.Pat. Ms.Pat's performance on the Degenerate season 2 on Netflix. Just too short. It was just too short. 17 minutes is not enough. Ms.Pat, it's just not. Ms.Pat's a murderer. She's a fucking murderer. Oh, she's like the female Joey Diaz. She's a black comedian. She's originally from the South, from Atlanta, but she now lives in what she calls the white neighborhood in Indianapolis, Indiana. She's a murderer. God, she's that's my only complaint about her performance on the Degenerates. It just wasn't long enough. But also, they could be given. It could be, maybe the precursor to her getting a full hour. I hope so. Because I didn't understand why they gave Nikki Glaser an hour special that came out on Netflix a few months ago, and then also gave her a spot on the Degenerates, too. It didn't make any sense to me. Didn't make any sense to me. Why did you could have put another comedian in that spot. Because I thought that's the whole concept of this show was, each season has like 5 or 6 different comedians. And maybe they're a comedian that, maybe they don't have enough material. They're not big enough to do an hour yet, but, you put them in a smaller venue, give them 30 minutes. But all these are like 17, 18 minutes. And they gave Nikki Glazer's in there. She just had an hour special come out on Netflix a couple of months ago. It made no sense. They could have given that slot to another comedian. I don't know. I just didn't agree with that. And to give Ms.Pat 17 minutes, Ms.Pat should have had at least 30 minutes at minimum. She's a murderer, though. She comes to your town, I highly suggest. And her story's insane. And all her comedy, all her stories, a lot of people make up stories, or they tell stories that are fudged or added to for comedic effect. No, not her. Keep that in mind when you listen to her tell her stories, because I've listened to her podcast, and I've listened to her. I've actually heard about her long before she was really breaking out, because Joey Diaz has been having her on his podcast for 5-6 years. She was also on Ari Shaffir's This Is Not Happening on Comedy Central. She's just hilarious. But when you listen to her stories, understand she's not lying about any of that. All that stuff really did happen to her. She was knocked up at 14, got shot in the head, and lived. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. She's raised, she calls them crack babies. She's raised like her kids, her daughter's kids. She raised, her niece's kids. She's just crazy. I really like her, though. She's an amazing comic, and I hope she blows up big. But definitely check out Ms.Pat on the Degenerates on Netflix, season 2. And this brings us now, ladies and gentlemen, to our final segment of the show. And I don't know what we'll call this segment. Vinyl Corner? I don't hate for everything to be corner. We already got MMA Corner. Vinyl Corner. Let's just call it Record of the Week. How about that? Record of the Week. And as I said in the last show, when I say record, ladies and gentlemen, I mean record. So what we're going to do here in the show, in this segment each week for Record of the Week, is each week I will randomly select from my personal vinyl record collection. I will do a blind selection, and I will randomly pick one record every week to feature for you here on the Whatever Whenever podcast. So this should be a lot of fun. And I've got a pretty eclectic, crazy mix of vinyl. So it'll be fun to pull a record out each week and discuss it and go through it with you guys. And this week's Vinyl Record of the Week, and just quick disclaimer here before we get into the Vinyl of the Week. Quick disclaimer here, just like I said on last week's show. Quick disclaimer, results may vary. Understand that you may not experience the same pleasure or the same enjoyment from these records as I do if you are listening to them in a digital format. Now, that may not always be the case. There are definitely some records that I think you're going to fucking love and you're going to listen to and you enjoy no matter what. But there are a lot of records, I have to say, and that's what we will only be covering here. We'll only be covering the vinyl versions of these records on the show that you just got to hear them on vinyl. And not through one of those fucking belt-driven turntables you bought at Target or bought at Walmart for $100 with a little, mono speaker on it. I'm talking about through a fucking real, direct drive turntable with a nice set of speakers and maybe a tube preamp with some platinum grade matched audiophile tubes and a nice receiver. Just listen to something with even if you don't have that, and I did it for a while because it was all I could, it's all I had or I had access to. But now record players have become so inexpensive because they're back now. You can get, maybe we'll do that. Maybe I'll highlight that and have that part of the show and coming shows, and I'll talk about some vinyl gear that I can suggest you can get into. Man, you can get yourself a nice setup now. A setup that would have cost you $3,000 or $4,000. 20, 30, 40 years ago, you can get yourself you can go on Amazon and get yourself a nice, non-belt drive, and those belts wear out. You can get yourself a nice direct drive, motor-driven turntable, a nice receiver, some good speakers, and a tube preamp and stuff. You can you can go on Amazon and get the whole shebang for like $600, dude. Seriously. Well worth it. That would cost you thousands in the past. But our vinyl record selection of the week, randomly selected out of my personal vinyl record collection, is Montrose. The debut album by American hard rock band Montrose, released in 1973 on the Warner Brothers record label, produced by none other than Ted Templeman. The album marks the recording debut of vocalist known at the time, he was an unknown vocalist, known at the time as Sam Hagar, later to be known as Sammy Hagar. And what a record. If you've never heard the first Montrose record, and listen, as far as Montrose goes, there ain't nothing else to hear past his first record. That's why Sammy Hagar became a solo artist and later went with Van Halen. The second album, I think, was it called Easy Money or something? I can't remember what it was called. It was a disaster. It was terrible. Man, Montrose was poised to be the American version of Led Zeppelin. Released on October 17th, 1973, Ted Templeman would also go on to be the producer for Van Halen. Ironically enough. What a fucking record. I mean, what a record. I can't believe, well, actually I can, because I know how corporate rock radio works, but, you listen to these fucking classic rock channels and they play the same classic rock channels. Man, there are at least 3 songs off the first Montrose record, which should be in heavy rotation on classic rock radio, which they just never play. An absolute classic record. Montrose was made up of Denny Carmassi on drums, Bill Church on bass, Sam Hagar on vocals, and Ronnie Montrose on lead guitar. Just a smoking, front-to-back, heavy rock album. And, the problem is with some of these records, especially with the problem with a lot of influential records, the passage of time and stuff, people hear things and they don't understand sometimes why records are influential. And this is one of the most influential records, especially on musicians ever. I mean, this album stuff's been lifted from this record more than anything else. I mean, Bad Motor Scooter, the second track God, so many great songs. It starts out with Rock the Nation, fucking great song. Bad Motor Scooter, unbelievable. The intro, listen to Bad Motor Scooter and listen to that intro, and you will hear where Motley Crue stole the intro to Kickstart My Heart from. That's where they got that from. They didn't come up with that on their own. That's straight up stolen, because in the days before the internet, it was a lot harder for people to tell where people lifted stuff from records. Ask Noel Gallagher, he'll tell you. He got away with lifting a lot of stuff because nobody could go and, now it's a lot harder to get away with lifting stuff from old records now because everything's out there. Rock the Nation and here's the other thing before we get into that. Records, the thing about records, it's a lost art with digital formats. The sequencing of the tracks and the sequencing of side 1 and side 2. It's such a lost art that's so important to me in the enjoyment of a great record. Because it wasn't just randomly done. There was so much thought and so much, so much effort that went in to making sure that the sequencing on records, and I think that to me is what started making records not be as good in the digital age. Was that because when you listen to something on a CD or on a file, it's just one continuous thing. Whereas when you listen to it on a record, you have two separate experiences. You listen to the side 1 of a record, it's one experience. Then you flip it over to side 2, and if it's sequenced correctly, then side 2 is a totally different experience. And this Montrose record is that. Side 1 is its own experience. Rock the Nation, Bad Motor Scooter, Space Station Number 5, I Don't Want It. I mean, this album clocks in at 32 minutes. And it's just off filler, no killer, straight up hard rock, bass, drums, guitar, vocals, no frills, front to back. You go to side 2, you got Good Rockin' Tonight, and then you got Rock Candy. Fuck. Dude, I don't care what kind of system you got, and I don't care if you're listening to it on digital or analog. Put on Rock Candy on the biggest fucking speakers you got. Crank that shit the fuck up and feel those Bonham-esque sounding drums hit your chest. Oh, fuck. Man, if I'm in a bad mood and I just need something to rock me, I throw on that first Montrose record. Holy shit. There's so many. I mean, from Iron Maiden to Motley Crue to punk bands like Stiff Little Fingers. So many bands have been influenced by the Montrose debut album from 1973. I've got a fucking pristine copy on vinyl, and I love it. Then you got One Thing on My Mind. That's a good song. And then the album ends with Make It Last. Oh, that's a fantastic song. And Van Halen as well. Van Halen was heavily influenced by Montrose. It's crazy. And you can hear it. You can definitely hear it. And this is good, 4 or 5 years before Van Halen was created. Produced by the same guy that would go on to produce all their classic albums, Ted Templeman. And then, of course, Sammy Hagar would go on to be their lead singer. It was recorded at the record plant in Sausalito, California, the same place where Fleetwood Mac also recorded a lot of the Rumors. I did record the Rumors album at. So, fantastic record. But like I said, it's kind of one of those things where it may not, once you've heard all the stuff that came after it, when you already heard all the stuff that's been played on classic rock, and you've heard all the classic heavy rock that came after the first Montrose album in 73, it might not be as impressive to you until you realized how much it influenced the landscape of rock music, not only in the 70s, but on into the 80s and beyond. So this is a highly suggested record, one of my favorite records of all time, the self-titled debut record from Montrose. Again, what's interesting, here's one last thing here on this record that I think is fascinating. You really want to have your mind blown. If you really want to take a deep dive on this record, do this. Another one of my favorite records, Van Morrison's Tupelo Honey. I got that one on vinyl as well. I'm sure we'll probably pull that one out of the hat at some point. But what's interesting is that the band on that album, on Van Morrison's Tupelo Honey, is the same band on the debut Montrose album. Ronnie Montrose on guitar, Denny Carmassi on drums, Bill Church on bass. Listen to Van Morrison's Tupelo Honey record. It's got Wild Night and the song Tupelo Honey on. Listen to that, right? Put that on first. Then listen to the first Montrose record right after it. And then realize that's the same band on both records. It's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. You can't even... You're like, how? How did they go from Tupelo Honey, which is a great record and has its own sound and vibe to it, to this all-out beast rock machine? And they went, and I don't mean just like over a span of a couple of years, they went directly from that. They did Tupelo Honey, and then the next thing they did was the Montrose debut album. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, that's all I got for you this week, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Whatever Whenever podcast with me, your host, Josh Reeves. We get into all things fandom, geekdom, music, movies, MMA, comedy, all the rest of it. And I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to doing and being here with you for more shows in the future. You guys take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.